to the stage to present a very brief tribute to the late, great Harry Belafonte, who was a godfather to us all.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, a tribute to Harry Belafonte. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present to you a tribute to a true icon of American culture and civil rights activism, Mr. Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte was a singer, actor, and activist who has been a major force for global change for over 60 years. He has used his platform to speak out against racism, poverty, and injustice, and to promote social change and human rights. He once said, "Art is not a thing, it's a way." And his way has been to use his art to make the world a better place. Belafonte was born in Harlem, New York in 1927 and grew up in poverty. He served in the US Navy during World War II and then worked as a janitor's assistant before pursuing a career in the performing arts, just like myself. He became famous in the 1950s as a singer, and such iconic hits as Deo, Have a Nagila, Jamaica Farewell. But Belafonte's true legacy lies in his activism. He was a close friend of Martin Luther King Jr. and played a major role in the civil rights movement. He used his celebrity status to raise awareness about racial inequality and push for an evolution of mainstream American culture. He was an early supporter of the SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and helped to fundraise for the organization. In the 1960s, he was a key figure in the fight against apartheid in South Africa, and he continued to advocate for human rights until the very end of his life. Belafonte has also been a champion of the arts. He was the first African American to win an Emmy Award. He produced the groundbreaking television special, And Even with Belafonte, which featured African American performers at a time when black people were all but absent from American television, which demonstrated the extraordinary talent and that the mainstream had shunned. His activism was not always popular. He faced criticism, career obstacles, and even death threats for his outspoken views. Despite all of this, he remained steadfast in his commitment to justice and equality. He once said, "I've always tried to live my life with the grace and dignity that comes with being a man of color who is proud of who he is and where he came from." The legacy of Mr. Belafonte's contributions to America and world culture serve as an inspiration to us now and in the future. I would like to end with a final quote, which I believe sums up his life's work. "We are here not only to survive, but to thrive, to do so with passion, compassion, humor, and style." Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, sir.
Oh,
that was beautiful.
Thank you. It was an honor.
Amazing. It's kind of really staggering to think of the life this man had.
I mean,
60 plus years of this level of work output as an artist and as someone who has created the moment that we're able to occupy.
Yeah. I think for me, it's also his beginnings. The fact that he was born in Jamaica. I don't know if a lot of people know that, and then to use his art as a way of creating change. To be having death threats. To speak out regardless. Some of his friends didn't agree with his...
And by the way, this was a father, so it's not just him, it's his beautiful young children who also could have been killed by people who just didn't want him to thrive. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Yeah. And at the same time, I don't know about you guys, but it makes me question what I'm doing with my art. You listen to all the things that he did, not only when he was at the top, but even in the beginning parts of his life. It was always a part of his creativity. And I think I had this, I don't know, during the pandemic, Black Lives Matter and especially in our business, it's like there's a lot of things that are not right, but we all have a platform, especially with social media. It definitely made me ask myself, am I doing all I can to push for change,
Yes. It's an amazing thing, and I was privileged to know this man in my own life for many, many years. I knew his children, and that's how I met him. But I remember a comment he made about the March on Washington, and he said, people remember us on the podium, but they forget that it was the people, the millions of people who actually made the change.
Look at that.
And I was like, oh my God, you know, he said, you've got to remember that the power is within you. We're just here to inspire you.
Yeah.
We're all doing the work together.
I mean, the power of the people, right?
Yes.
And again, that speaks to, you know, to us, is there more we can do as people coming together and to be consistent with it? That's one thing about Harry. He was very consistent. And but I think that was it's not to give ourselves an excuse. I think that was a very unique time because his mentor was Paul Robeson, right? And you know that he was an amazing man. So
Paul Robeson was the child of slaves.
Yeah.
Slaves.
Yeah, yeah. And then obviously his friendship with Sidney Poitier as well. And for me, I think we're in a place where it's really interesting. It's like, how much can you say? And what I love about Harry Belafonte, he would always say it as it is. It doesn't matter if he's got a new movie coming out or he's got his chat show. You know, he just always spoke the truth. And I think that's something for us to be inspired by, not only in terms of our version of activism, but also within our work. And I think we're on that wave now of like, enough is enough. You know, Harry would say no to a lot of these stereotypical roles that were out at those times.
That's why he didn't work for a while.
Yeah. And yet, the argument, because we've all got to pay our bills, but I think we are at a time where authenticity is really important, right? If we're going to tell our stories, we need to tell them right, and we need to have ownership, you know, not just in front of the camera, behind the camera, because it's always limited in front of the camera.
And you made an interesting point about him being active at early stages of his career.
Yeah.
Before there was fame, before there was power, before there was visibility.
Yeah.
He did it.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something that we have to remind ourselves that we actually have the ability to affect change even just through paying attention to someone or something, or unifying people together and pushing for a better moment.
Yeah. What also I loved about him, he was very aware and open to what was going on around the world, let alone in America. You know, I think I read somewhere, you know, a foundation or that supported the course that Obama benefited from. You know, he was part of that, and he put some money into it as part of the fundraising, and just that legacy. You know, if we look at Afro Can, right? You know, there's a version of what is this going to do for people in 20 years' time. You know,
the kids that come up after us will be millionaires before they're 30.
Listen, it's important. Look, I'm not saying that we're all like Harry Belafonte. We've got a lot to keep up with him, but there is something in terms of what every person is doing in this room right now. You know, even Prudence and the work, it really is important, and it takes somebody to step forward. It's not easy to do this. It's not easy to create films, and I just think the more that we just share our wins with each other and collaborate, the better it is, you know. And it's about education as well, pointing people on to organizations like this. But even outside of that, it's like, be aware that there are other countries struggling. There's certain things going on in certain cities. And I think that's one thing Belafonte represented. He was very aware of what was going on around the world and would get involved, would fly to South Africa. You know, he would go to Senegal, you know, East Africa.
I mean, so art is activism, and this has been a theme that's been recurring today. I mean, you know, the very act of creation is sort of this magnificent thing where you tap into something that is God-given, coming from the universe, and interpreted in the way that is unique to you, and that in and of itself is something magnificent. But then we tie a political or a cultural shift as an agenda into that. I mean, how do you manifest that in your own work?
You know what? It's a tough question, because for me in my own work, I'm always thinking about, like, what is the story that I'm trying to tell, whether it's something I'm producing or it's a role that I'm playing. And yes, I might be limited to what's written on the page, but I've still got ownership and control in terms of how I want to portray this character. I can still lean against the writer, the producers go, can we go a different way? Or actually, I don't even ask. I just do it. And they've got it in the can, and then if they don't say anything, we keep moving. But I know what I was doing. But recently, I did a documentary called Handle with Care, and it's about adoption and fostering. It's about my journey into the world via the UK system. And the reason I did that is because I feel like universally, when you hear about people being through the care system, society makes you go, I bet they've had it tough, or they've not got much going on for themselves for their life. You know, the stats are terrible, and the stats are facts, but they're not the full story. So I wanted to tell a story about someone that had been through the care system. Yeah, had to overcome some things, but actually had a positive outcome, and I think that's like my version of going, look, there's a real issue how the world views care, adoption or fostering, and there's a real issue about it being a taboo subject within the black community. There's a lot of black people that have been through the care system, but also a lot of them are my heroes. Actors like Lenny James, you know, you got Tiffany Haddish, you know, you got Seal, the singer. Like, there's tons. I could go on all day, and I just wanted to use my voice in that way, and just to spark a different debate, shine a light on the full story. Because again, like our history, it's like we were there, but you're not telling the full full
I
part.
saw this film and I was really very moved and very touched by it. I was also sincerely in admiration of your bravery, because this was the first time I'd ever seen anybody express something about that subject in such a sensitive way, such a personal way, and yet, you know, make such a powerful statement about what can happen.
No, thank you. I mean, look, it's interesting. I made it before Bel Air came out, you know, that thing of actors. It's great to have a bit of a mystery, but I realized this story is bigger than me, you know, and I realized it was a universal story. I sold it to Peacock TV. I remember hitting them up, going, "Hey, I'm on your channel. Before I go and speak to HBO, Amazon, and everybody else, do you want to watch it and maybe buy it?" You know, this is what we hear, right? It's a buyer's market. But it was hard being like vulnerable publicly, right? You know, I'm public-private, but I just had to remember this is bigger than me. I wanted to make, like, we're talking about impact, you know, and I'm thinking about Harry Belafonte. Like, I wanted to make a film that would inspire that 11-year-old version of myself, you know, and go, oh my gosh, like, he's saying he's been through the similar care system to me, and it's not about him being famous or on TV. No, he's saying he can have a life. He can,
as a whole human being.
yes, and he's showing me I can be anything I want to be, because society, the narrative is saying that I can't. That incarceration, drugs, you know what I mean, you know, unemployment, I can't have a family. So I just wanted to switch that. And so it's not easy. It's not easy for my family as well. You know, we're putting our whole stuff out there. You know, it's all out there. But then again, it's not that I was thinking about Harry Belafonte, but when I was just reading up about him recently, just to remind myself, I was like, he was doing the same thing. He was on the front line, you know, and in two ways, politically, but also like creatively. He would say no to some of the biggest roles ever, because he's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that on screen, you know, and I think, you know, we can all have our version of that. Doesn't matter where we are on the industry ladder, make the work, make it from the heart, and you know, let's keep winning and growing.
And you know, and in that refusal, he created other opportunities. He had to.
Yeah,
and so that's the other side of it. It's like he wasn't just sitting there waiting. He got on with things.
Well, look, if you think about it, right? I think his LP or album was the first $1 million album, right. You know. But also, in some ways, he was a multi-hyphenate. You know, we use that term a lot now. You know, we can't just be actors, writers, or producers. We have to do many different things. But him being a singer, you know, as well as an actor, you know, I think he directed as well, produced, and also he brought us. He collaborated a lot with a lot of other people as well. I think they're the things that we could do better now. When I look at that time and what was going on, I think we can come together more. We're stronger together, and we could collaborate just to move the needle.
That's a great example. You know, I'm curious in this audience here of so many creative people. How many people see themselves as activists in their art? All right. I'd love to get some examples. I think I'm curious. I mean, I know Prudence's example, but maybe Rachel, how do you see yourself as an activist? Yes. We've gotten very intimate. I know everybody on a first name basis now.
For me, I've noticed that there's a lack of roles for diversity. So as a producer, now I'm giving back and I want to hire people of color, Latino, Black, Asian, and I work with diversity. I made 2 films and I try to bring diversity into my film so we can be seen and tell our stories. But I also want to tell stories about subjects that matters to me, like domestic violence. I would love to make a film about that, to help people that are in abusive relationship to get out. So I want to tell stories that wake up people and help people in their life.
Great. I think there was other hands.
Hello, my name is Love. I'm from Canada. I find myself as an activist on the issue of racial discrimination, and especially where I live. And Canada doesn't sound like a place where you have racism, but it is real there. It's operating, it's not hidden, it's obvious and not being addressed enough. So I find myself as a voice to the Black community in that nation.
Yeah, my name is Sydney, and I'm an actor and storyteller from Sweden. And my activism is, I'm coming from adoption, but actually our adoption is human trafficking. It's a huge trial about this in South America. And also I have autism, so my activism in Sweden is to try to get more people speak out about a story, because we're very discriminated, excluded because we have autism, but also because we are, a lot of people that are human trafficking victims have a lot of trauma. And and in Sweden, people will tell a story, but it's other people that tells a story. But we need to be the voice to tell our own story. So in that way, I'm an activist in my art.
Yeah, good evening all. My name is Amasori, a producer from Nigeria. Thank you, Mr. Jimmy, for the wonderful tribute. My own is a simple question. Actually, what is that you have in place? What is that you do to ensure that the millions of homeless and vulnerable children in African streets get inspired by your story? What is that you do? Thank you.
Thank you. I try to, first thank you. I try to be, always be true to myself, but be proud of where I'm from. I'm a British-born Nigerian man. You see Akingbola, that says a lot. But instead of pressure, I wear that name with pride. And I think with the show Bel Air, because I'm playing as Jamaican, everyone's like, oh, he's Nigerian. But I enjoy that reveal, and it's that thing of like the whole diaspora. We're everywhere. I feel like Nigerians, we're like the ants mafia. We're everywhere. Cuba, Brazil, we are everywhere. So I just try to be aware. Every role I'm doing, I'm just trying to be aware of those millions of young children and people that would see my name and maybe pay a little bit of extra attention to it, as I would if I see anyone of color. I'm like, what's this? I'm gonna watch it, And so I just try and do that, and then be open. If I meet anyone, if anybody messages me, I try to support their dreams and let them know that, because I think there's a way traditionally to be a creative. No, you can't be who's this actor? You have to be a lawyer, doctor, accountant, and it's that thing now. I think that's changing, but I think that's all generationally, and also when you see so many others doing well, that's about impact. You understand, And so I just want to be a part of that change culturally and be like, look, auntie, please, let your daughter, she's going to be an amazing producer, writer, she's going to be bigger than all those other Nigerian stars, but culturally, we have to let, I think, our children just dream big and go for it.
You're demonstrating a quote from Harry Belafonte, which says, I've always thought that the artist's role is to transcend the limitations that are imposed by the human condition.
Oh, look at that.
I mean, that's kind of the personification of what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's so amazing and so profound and so inspirational. He also said something that I thought was pretty funny, but kind of cool. The secret of my success is that I bit off more than I could chew, and I chewed as fast as I could.
I love that.
Ambition, but, addressing it when it happened.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because this business, he says, if you're not offered that much, then you have to create that food, right? You know, I come from a background where it's like, well, if you're not getting in the room, then you're gonna have to build it yourself, you know, build it and they will come. Right. If they don't come, then you're gonna have to take it to them, you know. And so there's lots of different versions, I think, of that quote. But I just look at this room and see an amazing Barry here, you know, like there's some amazing talent in this room, and there's some shoulders that we are standing on and that we can continue to stand on and just expand, you know what I mean? Like, I think you said something before, we always refer to as the, you know, sort of the minority, right?
Right.
But really,
you know, I hate that.
Really, you're like, we're not we're the majority.
Global majority, and if once that switch gets flipped, it's going to be pretty radical. Because I mean, I really remember sitting in a room where people from Africa and from the African diaspora were referring to themselves repeatedly as minorities, and it was like, what are you talking about? You're not the minority, you're the majority. And when you start to understand that connecting with each other is going to result in so much power that anything you want to see happen is going to be within your own reach. You don't have to ask anybody for anything. You're already rich, you're already powerful, you're already everything you need to be and more. That's why the world is all over everything we do in the first place, because they know that we have this innately. So we don't have to, we need to really own that and really feel it.
Yeah, and I think it is, like you said, it's a mental switch, isn't it, you know? And that can be anything. It could be, you know, depending on where you grew up, you know, family background. But I do think you got to be aware of that shift and lead with.
And get out of that colonial mindset.
Yeah.
That's where that came from.
Yeah.
And we need to unshackle that and kill it and move on and enjoy the beauty of what it is to be all those things.
And in some ways, that's what I love about Harry Belafonte and Sidney Poitier, you know, and Paul Robeson. If you can imagine how many shackles they had in the 50s, right? But the way they moved, you know what I mean? They moved like water.
Way more elegantly than we do.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry. Maybe you kind of do. Maybe you do.
No,
I
seriously.
know.
No, just reading that opening speech, I'm just like, wow, this man was amazing. And also, I feel a little bit, I'm humbled. So many Americans in here today. I feel like they could have also read that, you know, that lovely opening.
One final thought is, artists are the gatekeepers of truth. We are civilization's radical voices.
Okay, somebody okay?
They passed out on the note. It was
Can you read that to me one more time, please, Stephen?
Artists are the gatekeepers of truth. We are the civilization's radical voice.
That's strong.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only speak for me. I'd be interested maybe ask the audience, but in my lifetime, the most times I've really been moved and I've seen something that's changed the way that I want to move in the world and I'm feeling, it is through art. Do you know what I mean? And it is through, I know I'm off the top of my head, I'm thinking of Spike Lee's early movies, you know what I mean? Do the Right Thing. I'm like, wow. Watching that as a kid, I'm just like, I don't even understand what I'm watching, but I'm moving different.
But things are feeling
Do you know what I mean?
different,
I'm moving different.
Right.
I'm moving. The switch is going. You know what I mean? You get older and you're like, oh, that's what I'm doing.
That movie is what made me want to go to Hollywood, because I thought there could be a chance that someone like me could do something like this.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
And here we are.
Yeah.
You know? And I got to work with him twice.
Look at that. And I think, you know, because there is that version of when you talk about art, it's art. We're not a doctor. We're not saving people's lives. But actually, no, let's flick the switch again. We are changing people's lives.
Yes.
Music. You know what I mean? I used to just sing theme tunes in my head. And I'd be like, I could see the scene. So, like, it's all the different compartments of art.
And to that point, I mean, it's why we're willing to dedicate our lives to this as well.
Yes.
It's not easy.
Yes. And globally as well. You know, you got Kenny here. He's another black Brit here. Kenny Gravelis. He showed me he does great artwork for films. Right? He's doing Transformers right now. He's like, oh yeah, this is one of the posters I did. He showed me Biggie Smalls' first album with the baby on the front cover.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. But I'm going back in my life, going, I remember when I first saw that. Do you know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, that's a different level of impact. Do you know what I mean? Changing people's lives in terms of everyone remembers buying that album. And I just feel like, you know, and then you've got the music side of things. Harry Belafonte loved music, you know, and look how far Afrobeat is going now.
Right.
Who's surprised now when you hear Afrobeat in Starbucks? Nobody. Isn't it? It's taken over. Like in a bigger way than reggae did or anything. It's everywhere. And so it's such an exciting time, and I think that just taps in back into that quote. And yeah, it's not to be underestimated what we do.
Well, thank you so much for these beautiful, heartfelt words.
No, thank
this
you.
amazing tribute to Mr. Harry Belafonte, who remains an inspiration to us all. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, man.
Love is all we need upon us. Let them come together.